Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. And we're going to talk about modeling Faerun to match the current American position of its premier leader, right? And for the premier leader in Faerun, the primary setting for Dungeons & Dragons today, okay? All right, so basically, I've been really interested in this idea. As we look at Dungeons & Dragons history, Gary Gygax in 1974 said very clearly, Dungeons & Dragons will will address directly the biggest cultural questions of the day, right? He started in 1974. He really put the hammer down on moving forward on it in 1981 when he started the Saturday morning cartoon, which really was a gigantic declaration that Dungeons & Dragons is about gender equality and Dungeons & Dragons is about racial equality. And then he put the explanation on it in 1986 when he said TSR is going to be it was the first tabletop role-playing game company, and it'll be the first tabletop role-playing game company to declare the future is female. And now all direction, all leadership starts and ends with Lorraine Williams, and handed it off and said progressiveness, female leadership, right? And that tradition is upheld by Wizards of the Coast today, right? And all the major cultural questions of today are answered in Strixhaven, are answered in Descent into Avernus, are answered in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, are answered in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, are answered in Sage Errata, Sage of Ice Errata, right? The biggest cultural questions of the day are run into head on, exactly the way Gary Gygax taught us to do with Dungeons & Dragons 1E, right? With Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, right? So we carry forward that tradition, all right? So let's look at the cultural position today of the prominent American leader, Joe Biden, and then see how we correctly model Faerun to match our current positions today, so that when we address cultural questions in our Dungeons & Dragons setting, they are set into the proper context. So I'm going to give you my humble opinion on how that's done today. All right, so I listened to Slate Political Gabfest. It is so good. It's the best commentary on, it is the absolute doubt best political commentary on America. By the way, everything I'm talking about today is American. If you want to set this into your own nation, you just got to find your nation's version of Scott Garibay. And if you find them, please send me their video, because I'd love to see who is me on the other side of the globe. All right, so this is all American specific, okay? Because that's the politics I know, and the cultural questions that my game are going to answer, right? They're all going to come from American politics, right? All right, so I listened to Slate Political Gabfest, and they got into it this week, and they said, how much trouble are Democrats in, right? And I was shocked. Now, Slate Political Gabfest, you got Emily Bazelon, you got John Dickerson, you got David Plotz, right? These people are dyed-in-the-wool liberals, just like liberal as liberal gets, right? And I couldn't believe what they were saying. They were like, it was absolutely shocking. They said, we are in a major trouble. We, as Democrats. And the reason why is, March 2020 problem pops off, right? And Trump sees the end of it, right? But he hands the ball off to Biden. Biden catches it like a ball of lava. It just burns his hands off, right? Biden has, he said, hey, listen, everybody, March 2020 problem's going to go away. It's not a problem. I got to take care of. No problem. That's why you elected me. I'll get it done. He ain't done nothing, right? You look around and you're like, is this March 2022 or March 2020? And it's hard to tell the difference. Almost every single problem we had in March 2020 is right here in March 2022. And Biden has shouted to the sky, Democrats will not help you with any real problems, right? And so David Plotz was like, we are set up for absolute slaughter in the midterm. And the Democrats, And he said three things. He said Democrats are about to get hit by an avalanche of defeat in the midterm. 2, in the Democrat Party, I kid you not, these are literally his words. In the Democrat Party, there is lots of depression. Right? They won. It was their time to shine and show the world that they could handle real problems. And all that has happened is there has been massive evidence that Democrats are not a party when crisis occurs. Democrats are a fun little party that you let it in when Republicans have set everything straight. And the economy is roaring like a lion. Then you could let them in for 4 years, let them have fun, let them shine up some unicorn horns, and hug a few Care Bears. But then as soon as things start to dip and any real problems show up, America needs Republicans, right? Like it's where we're at, right? Then they said on top of this, not only is there lots of depression, but there is an unprecedented amount of retirements, right? Biden has done such a bad job and assured every American that the Democrats are not a party for crisis. They are only a party for when the Republicans have stabilized everything, right? That there are people who are now, like there are just literally hundreds of Democrats, probably 100 to 200 Democrats that are about to retire because they just don't want to be here when the hammer falls. And so Biden has just cocked everything 6 ways to Sunday, right? It's been really bad, right? All right, so in America, we have a completely unprecedented change, right? The Democrats have just assured everybody like that the idea that the Democrats and the Republicans are on the same footing and they're equal parties is complete nonsense, and that no Democrat president should ever be in place when a crisis occurs, right? Like Biden has just assured everybody across the board. How do we model this in favor? Well, first of all, when you talk about the premier leader in favor, who is it going to be, right? Is it Lord Daggall Neverember over in Neverwinter? No, he ain't got no books, right? Like there are no books that have Neverwinter in the name, right? Like not in today's Dungeons and Dragons, right? When it comes, how about Fandolin? There is a book that has Fandolin, right? That's in the Essentials Kit, right? But it doesn't say the Fandolin Essentials Kit. It says Dungeons and Dragons Essential Kits. Let's talk about Layrall right? Silverhand, right? She is the leader of Waterdeep, okay? Her city has 2 books. Waterdeep, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and Waterdeep, Dragon Heist, right? So Layrall Silverhand knows how to play the political game. She got 2 books, right? 2 books, right? So she is the premier leader of Faerun, right? She's the one who has prominence. She's the one people know. Everybody care about Waterdeep, right? Not many people care about Fandolin, and some people care about Neverwinter, but a lot less, right? Okay. So if you're talking about Joe Biden, Dungeons and Dragons Joe Biden, in my humble opinion, is Layrall Silverhand, right? Now, how's she doing? She doing it just like Joe Biden, right? Why is Layrall Silverhand doing exactly what Joe Biden is doing and cocking up really, really making life in Waterdeep suck the way Joe Biden is making life in America suck now, right? Like, why is that? Well, because Gary Gygax said this game is for answering cultural questions of today. He said that in 1974, made sure the point was made in 1981, reiterated in 1983, 1984, 1985, and put the exclamation point on it with his action declaration, The Future is Female, when he made Lorraine Williams the CEO in 1986, when he made sure she became the CEO in 1986, right? Setting up a progressive future for Dungeons and Dragons, right? And then Wizards of the Coast is carrying that forward, and so I think they actually very clearly modeled Layrall Silverhand as kind of a Democrat analog, in my humble opinion. Okay, all right. So let me back that up with some proof. What's happening in Waterdeep, right? Well, you got Xanathar, and he's rolling with his own crime syndicate, right? He's like, yeah, Layrall Silverhand's the leader. That's fine. I'll stand up my super dark, super deadly crime syndicate, right? So Xanathar rolling, right? Who else is rolling with a crime syndicate? There's more than one there are 2 crime syndicates in Waterdeep. Who's the other one? Zentarum, right? Zentarum was stood up by a group of adventurers, right? They retire, they're done kicking Boulay butt, right? And they're like, oh, hey, let's roll over into Waterdeep and create a crime syndicate. Now there are 2 crime syndicates in Waterdeep. That ain't enough, right? Laeral Silverhand got her hand over her eyes, and guess what she's doing? She's leaving room for the Castleters to bring up a demonic cult right in the middle of the city, right? So under Laeral Silverhand's leadership, you got 2 crime syndicates and a demonic cult, right? You know what that means? That means the Waterdeep people need to be saved. The Waterdeep people need to be saved. The Waterdeep people need to be saved. Who's going to save them? Your player characters, right? So if you are following Dungeons & Dragons history, Gary Gygax straight to Amanda Heyman, right? These sessions, these games are made for running headlong into the cultural questions of today, right? And if you're going to do that, you need to model Faerun to look like modern America, right? If you're going to be a good, sound, crush it dungeon master, right? In my humble opinion. All right, so how do you do that, right? So first of all, that means your next quest for your player characters is to unseat Laeral Silverhand so that they can get a leader who is going to help them, not serve them up to 2 separate crime syndicates and a demonic cult, right? So how does that happen? How do your player characters unseat Laeral Silverhand? Well, I'll tell you right now how. First of all, Laeral Silverhand is good alignment. So that has to be nonviolent, right? So basically, they have to find a way to unseat Laeral Silverhand and make sure when it's done, Laeral Silverhand is alive. Not going to be easy, but it's a very cool, very interesting, very needed quest for your player characters to do this week. That's my opinion. How do you intend to make sure that your Dungeons & Dragons game, so that I can answer the cultural questions of the day, is perfectly, if you're an American Dungeon Master, is perfectly modeled to match our current American political situation, so that when you answer cultural questions in your game, the way Gary Gygax showed us, and the way in 1984, and the way Amanda Heyman showed us in 2022, how do you do that in your game? I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.